Hey everyone, Mr. Sujano here, your source for gaming, tech, emulation, and open source news. Let's get started. Alright, we'll kick things off talking about Nintendo 3DS emulation with Citra, and Citra's got a few updates you may be interested in. So if you like to use cheats, Citra Nightly 2066 has got you covered. They implemented the global cheat engine. If you were having issues with cheats not working, hopefully this fixes them. On top of that, there was a fix for save states. If you were trying to load save states multiple times in a single session and you were experiencing some crashing, hopefully that should be fixed now. For Citra on Android, they implemented hotkey support, and you can find this right in your gamepad settings. At the time of filming though, this feature is pretty limited. It can do 4 things. It can toggle your layout, swap screens, close your game, or pause and resume. And finally, for Citra on macOS, they added in support for opening files directly. Now to pick up the latest and greatest version of Citra, head to citra-emu.org and click on download. Once you are here, click on Manual Download, and then pick up the latest Nightly build or the more experimental Canary build, and you should be good to go. And now we get into the rapid fire stuff. First on the docket is Nintendo DS emulation with Nudes, and Nudes just got a brand new update. For Android specifically, in the latest rolling release, they've implemented microphone support. Next, for Nintendo Switch emulation on Android with Yuzu, if you've got a Snapdragon CPU, you may want to check out the latest Mesa drivers. At the time of filming, version 24 revision 14 is the latest version. If you pair that with the latest version of Yuzu, which at the time of filming is version 179, you may have some very interesting and positive results. I mean, someone's got Skyrim up and running at a stable 30 frames per second and looking really good. And this one I'm even more impressed with. Someone's got Dragon Ball FighterZ up and running between 58 to 60 frames per second and looking fantastic. Next, we're talking about Windows emulation on Android with Mobox, and someone's got Grand Theft Auto 5 looking pretty playable. Interestingly enough here, we've got Grand Theft Auto 5 playable on Android through Mobox before GTA 6. And speaking about Windows emulation on Android, next up we're quickly talking about Winlator, and this is more of just an update to yesterday's video for clarification. In yesterday's video, I said that Winlator was open source. And to be clear here, it's mostly open source. It's not fully open source. It's a lot more open source than it used to be, so at least it's making progress. Next, we're talking about Game Boy Advance emulation with Hades, and Hades just got a nice quality of life update. So the latest version of Hades supports loading games from archives, like .zip. Hades is free, it's open source, and it's available for Linux, Mac, and Windows. Moving on, and we're talking about Atari Lynx emulation on PC with Felix. Now, during filming of this video, they've got a brand new update, but I was planning on talking about the one they released yesterday. They fixed a long-lasting bug that resulted in too fast emulation and audio glitches. It's nice to see that this emulator is very active in terms of development. Next up, we're talking about a brand new Super Nintendo game called Dottie Flowers, and they just released a trailer for this. The gameplay itself looks pretty good, and the dialogue and cutscenes also look pretty good. If you are interested in this one and wanted to acquire a copy of the game, getting it is going to be a little bit weird. They're not releasing the full game as a digital download, which is very unfortunate. But there is going to be a physical edition, but to find out how to buy the physical edition, you've got to play through the digital demo. I'll drop a link to this website in the description below and feel free to check it out. However, as a bonus here, there was a previous Dottie game. It was called Dottie Dreads Not, and I'll drop a link to this one in the description below. You can pick up the full digital version of it. Next, we're talking about Switch 2 rumors, and there were a lot of rumors today about the Switch 2 being an iteration of the Switch. All of this stuff today stemmed from Dr. Toto, an industry analyst who predicted that the next Switch 2 is going to be an iteration of the Switch as opposed to a revolution. In my opinion here, I would take this with a grain of salt. I mean, this is just speculation. Safe speculation, but at the same time just speculation, and things may change. Next, it appears that Xbox has found itself in a small controversy. ID at Xbox, where ID stands for Subscribe to Mr. Sujano, or Independent Developers, depending on how you want to interpret that, tweeted out some AI art. For those who may be unaware, ID at Xbox is a program to help indie developers self-publish their games. And Joey Miller sums up the controversy perfectly. Nothing says you care about independent work more than using AI for your promotional art. Now, I'm not necessarily against using AI. However, in this specific case, I kind of am. I mean, AI has been known to use real-life sources in order to generate artwork. Moving on, if you like to use Linux, but you don't like Systemd, well, Nitrux might be the distro for you. Nitrux version 3.2.1 just dropped. Aside from a whole bunch of fixes and updates, including driver updates, KDE updates, and more, there's now a checkbox to turn off password strength validation. This new version of Nitrux also has some interesting features, like active blur that blurs the desktop background when you've got a window open. Next, it appears that Twitch is trying to stay away from controversy. They've been in the center of controversy for a while now, especially with the black censor bar meta. And it appears they're completely banning people who use censor bars now. Any sort of implied partial or full nudity is banned. Next, we're talking about Continuum, a free and open source game agnostic mod manager and modification engine, and it just got a brand new update. So version 1.1 just dropped, and we've got a whole bunch of bug fixes here, and it now supports Lego games and games that use similar file structures. On top of that, the developer added support for Batman Arkham Knight, and says the cool part is that any game that works with Continuum works with Linux. And last up here, we're talking about Tetris on the NES. Now, Tetris on the NES on its own isn't necessarily newsworthy. However, a 13-year-old just beat the game. Yes, beat the game, and this might be a world's first. If you are curious about this one, I'll drop a link to a couple of YouTube videos in the description below, and I do recommend checking it out. It's a very interesting sequence of events. Basically, the game crashes, it runs out of memory. Now, to me, this is impressive for a whole bunch of different reasons, and one of the biggest ones is that this kid is only 13 years old, and way better than I'd ever dream of being at Tetris. This is incredible. But anyways, that is all I've got for you in this one. Straight to the point, all stuff and no fluff. We talked about a bunch today. Let me know your thoughts about absolutely any of it in the comments below. If you like this video, leave a like. If you didn't like this video, leave a like. Hit that subscribe button, check out my other videos. Don't tempt fate, save your state.